In a small pull-off on Route 84, a young woman huddled against the gravel shoulder, clutching a little boy close to her chest. Her name was Isabella Torres, 26 years old, her brown hair tangled from the wind and the frantic escape that had brought them here. Her son, Diego, just 3 years old, held on to her as if he could never let go. His tiny arms circled her neck, his forehead pressed into her shoulder, and his favorite green dinosaur shirt was streaked with dirt. Isabella's jeans were scraped from the tumble earlier, her t-shirt torn at the shoulder, and a bruise darkened the curve of her jaw. They had nothing, no car, no phone, no money. Just each other, and the uncertain road ahead. Her breaths came in short, trembling gasps, not from the heat, which had begun to fade, but from the adrenaline that still coursed through her veins. She kept glancing down the empty road, half expecting Luis, the man she had once loved and now feared, to come barreling toward them. The thought of him finding them made her chest tighten. He had been charming at first, the kind of man who made her laugh, the man who whispered promises of a life together. But slowly, over months and years, that love had warped into control. His words had turned sharp, then cold, then cruel. Eventually, the cruelty became hands raised in anger, and hands that eventually threatened Diego. That was the line Isabella could not allow him to cross. So that afternoon, when Luis had finally passed out drunk on the couch, Isabella had grabbed Diego and run. She had sprinted barefoot down the dusty driveway, out of their neighborhood, and then walked for hours along the empty stretch of highway until exhaustion forced her to sit. That was when she realized the crushing truth: she had nowhere to go. No phone to call for help, no money to pay for a motel, no plan at all. Just her son, sleeping fitfully against her, and the open road stretching endlessly ahead. "Mommy?" Diego's small voice broke through her fog of fear. "I'm scared. Can we go home?" Isabella swallowed hard, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "We will, baby. We're going to be okay," she whispered, pressing him closer. She didn't know how they'd be okay, but the lie soothed him enough for now. A rumble of tires made her heart leap into her throat. A car was approaching, a black pickup truck slowing on the shoulder, kicking up little clouds of dust as it neared. Her first instinct was to grab Diego and run, but run where? The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, the sun already brushing the mesas with streaks of deep gold and purple. She had no energy left, no plan, and she realized with a sinking feeling that sometimes, you had to trust a stranger. The truck stopped a few feet away, and a man stepped out. He was in his late 30s, wearing a light gray button-up shirt tucked neatly into khaki pants, a pair of sturdy hiking boots on his feet. His hair was short, dark, and slightly tousled, and even from a distance, Isabella could see the concern etched across his face. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he called gently, keeping a safe distance. "Do you need help?" Isabella's throat was dry. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks, and pulled Diego closer. "My name's Ethan Parker," the man continued softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to make sure you and your son are okay. Are either of you hurt?" Isabella took a shaky breath. We're okay," she managed to say, though it was a weak lie. Ethan glanced behind them at the empty stretch of road, then back at Isabella. "How long have you been out here?" "A few hours, maybe." "I don't know," she admitted, looking down at Diego, who was peeking at the man with sleepy, dark brown eyes. "Are you running from someone?" he asked gently. Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Yes." "Then this is not a safe place for you," Ethan said softly. "If someone is looking for you, this highway is exactly where they'd check first. Please, let me help you. I can take you somewhere safe." "I have no money," Isabella said quietly, her voice breaking. "That's not important," Ethan replied. "I'm offering help. No strings attached. I just want to make sure you and your son are safe." Isabella studied him carefully. This well-dressed stranger, standing calmly in the desert evening light, could be anyone. And yet, as she looked down at Diego, who was now resting his head on her shoulder, she realized they had no other choice. "Okay," she whispered. Ethan nodded and walked to the truck, opening the back door. He returned with a small bottle of water and handed it to her. "Here, you both need something to drink." Gratefully, Isabella helped Diego sip from the bottle first, then took small sips herself. Ethan stayed back, giving them space, never crowding, never rushing. When they were ready, he guided them gently into the truck bed, making sure Diego was safely on her lap before getting into the driver's seat. "There's a shelter about 45 minutes from here," Ethan explained as he started the truck. "They have counselors, medical staff, legal support, everything you might need. We can get you there, and you can figure out the next steps from a safe place. Is that okay?" Isabella nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you," she whispered. As they drove, Ethan made small, gentle conversation to keep the mood calm. "How old is your son?" "3, Isabella said softly. "His name is Diego." "That's a strong name," Ethan said warmly. "Hi, Diego." "Hi," Diego murmured, blinking sleepily. "Are you hungry, buddy?" Ethan asked, reaching into the truck console. "I've got some crackers and juice boxes here. Would that be okay?" Isabella nodded, and Ethan handed over a small snack. Diego's tiny fingers eagerly grabbed the crackers, and Isabella realized he probably hadn't eaten since that morning. As Diego munched quietly, Isabella felt a small measure of calm settling over her. After a few minutes, she finally asked, "Why did you stop? Why help us?" Ethan's hands tightened around the steering wheel for a moment before he spoke. "My sister, she was in a situation similar to yours, years ago. I didn't know how to help her until it was too late, and she got seriously hurt. I promised myself that if I ever saw someone in danger like that, I wouldn't drive past. That's why I stopped." "Is she okay now?" Isabella asked softly. "She is," Ethan said with a faint smile. "It took her years to feel safe again, but she rebuilt her life. She's happy, has a family. But seeing you, I knew I couldn't just keep driving. I couldn't." Isabella's tears slid down her cheeks again. "I should have left sooner. I kept thinking he'd change, that he'd be the man I loved. And now I had nowhere to go, no family, no money. He made sure of that. That's what people like him do," Ethan said gently. "They isolate you, make you dependent. But you're out now. That's what matters. You protected your son, and you protected yourself." They drove in silence for a while. Diego had finally dozed off, resting his head against Isabella's chest, breathing evenly. Isabella looked out at the desert landscape as it blurred past, the mesas glowing red in the fading light, the horizon stretching endlessly. Soon, they arrived at the shelter. Ethan parked the truck but didn't get out immediately. "I'm going to give you my card," he said, reaching into his jacket. "It has my number. If you need anything at all, you call me, okay?" Isabella took the card, reading the simple script, "Ethan Parker, community volunteer and advocate." She looked up at him, startled. "You're just someone who wanted to help," Ethan said firmly. "The title doesn't matter." He opened her door and draped his jacket over her shoulders to shield her torn shirt from the evening chill. "It's getting cold," he said simply. Isabella hugged the jacket around her, feeling both warmth and the weight of his kindness. "What if I can't return it?" "I don't want it back," he said with a slight smile. "Consider it yours. Everyone needs something warm when they're starting over." He walked back to his truck, and Isabella watched until the tail lights disappeared into the night. Then, guided by a kind woman at the shelter named Maria, she stepped inside with Diego, into safety and warmth, and the first real breath of relief she had felt in months. The first night at the shelter was quiet but strange. The hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional creak of doors reminded Isabella that they were far from the solitude of the desert, yet it also meant they were safe. Diego slept snugly in a small cot beside her, clutching a blanket he had chosen from the shelter's supply. Isabella held his little hand in hers, feeling the warmth and weight of it, reminding her why she had run, why she had survived. The next morning, Maria, the shelter coordinator, knocked gently on their door. "Good morning, Isabella. Time to start today gently, okay? Breakfast is ready, and we'll talk about what you might need moving forward." Isabella nodded, pushing back tears she hadn't realized were still clinging to her. Diego rubbed his eyes sleepily, muttering, "Breakfast?" "Yes, baby. Breakfast," she whispered, smiling down at him. They joined the other residents in the communal dining area. The smell of warm eggs, toast, and fresh fruit filled the room, and for the first time in months, Isabella felt the edge of her fear soften. She noticed other women talking quietly with staff, children playing carefully nearby. Everyone seemed tired but steady, as if the world had pushed them down, but they were slowly getting up again. Over the following days, Isabella began to piece together a plan. Maria helped her with paperwork for government assistance, legal advice on restraining orders, and finding a daycare for Diego during her work hours. It was overwhelming, but she found strength in small victories: a successfully filled form, a day Diego played safely with other children, a counselor offering a reassuring smile. Ethan checked in that first week as promised, though carefully, so he didn't overwhelm her. A simple text. "I just wanted to make sure you arrived safely. No pressure, just here if you need anything." Isabella stared at her phone, feeling a mixture of gratitude and caution. She typed back, "We're okay. Thank you." It wasn't much, but it was a start. A few weeks later, Isabella managed to land a job at a local cafe in Santa Rosa, a small New Mexico town not far from the highway where she had escaped. The manager, a kind woman named Darlene, gave her a part-time schedule, enough to start earning while still leaving mornings free to care for Diego. Diego thrived in the small daycare affiliated with the cafe. Isabella watched him from the window as he laughed, chasing another boy around a sandbox. His tiny joy was infectious, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe they really were moving forward. One chilly evening, after her first full day working, Isabella stepped outside the cafe to find Ethan waiting in his old pickup truck, parked a few spaces away. She froze for a moment, part of her still flinched at the sight of a man appearing seemingly out of nowhere, but then she reminded herself, he had been nothing but kind, nothing but safe. "Hi," he said softly as she approached. "I thought I'd check in." Isabella hesitated but nodded. "Thanks. It's been a long day." "I can imagine," Ethan said. "Do you want to grab a coffee?" "Nothing fancy, just a warm drink." She agreed, and they walked to a small diner nearby. They sat in a quiet booth, the hum of conversation and clinking dishes providing a comforting backdrop. "You're doing amazing," Ethan said quietly. "I know it doesn't feel like it. But you're taking every step forward, even when it's scary." Isabella shook her head. "I don't feel amazing. I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "Maybe that's exactly what strength looks like," Ethan replied. "Not being perfect, not having it all figured out, but still moving forward anyway." She studied him, really looked at him this time. There was no judgment in his eyes, no impatience. Just a calm, steady presence. She realized how much that steadiness mattered after years of chaos with Luis. As weeks turned into months, Isabella and Diego grew more comfortable. The shelter became a place of stability, and the cafe became a space where Isabella could reclaim a part of her life. She began to save small amounts of money, each dollar a small victory over the fear and helplessness that had dominated her life for so long. Ethan continued to check in periodically. Sometimes it was a text, sometimes a phone call, occasionally he would stop by with a small gesture, a package of crayons for Diego, a warm blanket for the chilly nights, a loaf of fresh bread from a local bakery. One evening, as Isabella tucked Diego into bed, he whispered, "Mom, will Daddy come back?" Her heart ached at the question, remembering the man who had hurt them. "No, baby," she said softly. "Daddy isn't coming back. But we have people who love us now, and we're safe. That's what matters." She kissed his forehead, watching his little chest rise and fall in peaceful sleep. And for the first time, she didn't feel the same crushing panic she had felt on that highway. She felt steady. Slightly lighter. Hopeful. One Saturday, while Isabella was working at the cafe, a sudden storm swept across the desert. Torrential rain, thunder, and wind made the normally quiet streets of Santa Rosa almost impassable. When she finished her shift, she discovered the road to the shelter was blocked by fallen tree limbs and flooding. Panicking, she called Maria. Only to learn that the shelter could not send a vehicle out in the storm. Her heart raced. Diego was still napping in a small cot, and she had no way to get him safely home. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "I heard about the storm. I'm in town. Do you need a ride?" Isabella felt a wave of relief wash over her. Within minutes, Ethan arrived in his pickup, headlights cutting through the heavy rain. Without hesitation, he helped her and Diego into the truck, securing Diego with a small car seat Ethan had set up in the back. During the drive, Ethan kept the conversation light, joking about the absurdity of New Mexico storms, while Isabella clung to the feeling of safety she had learned to trust in him. The journey was slow, careful, but steady. And by the time they arrived at the shelter, dry and safe, Isabella realized just how much trust she had placed in him, and how much comfort that trust brought. Over the next several weeks, Isabella learned the full scope of Ethan's kindness. He never pressured her, never assumed intimacy, never made her feel unsafe. Instead, he offered practical help, rides to appointments, help with filling out forms, guidance on job applications. Slowly, Isabella's initial gratitude transformed into genuine friendship. One evening, after a long day of paperwork at the shelter, Isabella sat on the front steps watching the desert sun dip behind the mesas. Diego played nearby with a few other children, his laughter echoing across the courtyard. Ethan appeared quietly beside her, holding 2 cups of cocoa. "You've done a lot today," he said, handing her a cup. "I feel like I've done nothing," she admitted, sipping slowly. "You've done everything," he said softly. "Every small step counts. Every form you filled out, every decision to keep moving forward, every time you chose to protect Diego instead of giving up, that's all courage." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. She had thought courage was about grand gestures, big, heroic escapes. But here it was, quiet and patient, building day by day. "You're right," she said, smiling softly. "It's just hard to remember sometimes." "I know," Ethan replied. "And that's why you have people who care. You don't have to do it alone." By the end of the 3rd month at the shelter, Isabella had started to feel grounded. Diego's laughter returned fully, his small hands tugging at hers, his stories of playground adventures spilling over at dinner. Isabella had begun saving, started applying for jobs beyond the cafe, and even considered moving into her own apartment once she had the means. And through it all, Ethan remained a steady presence, neither overwhelming nor absent. He reminded her that kindness existed, that not every man was like Luis. One evening, as Isabella tucked Diego into bed, he hugged her tightly. "Mom, I like our new life," he said. "I do too, baby," she whispered. "I do too." And for the first time, in a long time, Isabella believed it. She believed in safety. She believed in small joys. She believed that maybe, just maybe, life could be better than it had been. The next several months passed with steady, quiet progress. Isabella continued her work at the cafe, her confidence growing with each shift. She learned the rhythms of her new life, the small joys that came with routine, and the power in independence. Diego thrived alongside her, his laughter filling the tiny apartment they had secured near Santa Rosa. Ethan remained a presence, though he was careful never to overstep. Sometimes it was a text, "Need anything?" or a phone call to check in. Other times, he showed up with small, thoughtful gestures, a new coloring book for Diego, a basket of fresh fruit, or a warm blanket for chilly nights. Every action reminded Isabella that not all kindness came with strings attached, and that some people truly did care. One evening, after a particularly long day at the cafe, Isabella found herself staring out the window of their small apartment. Diego was asleep, curled up with his dinosaur plushie. For the first time in years, Isabella allowed herself to imagine a future without fear. She didn't know what that future would look like, but she knew one thing: they were safe, and they were moving forward. Over time, Isabella found a second job at a local bookstore, something she had always dreamed of. It was slower work, quieter, but it allowed her to learn and grow in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Diego began attending a nearby preschool, forming friendships with other children, and Isabella saw the spark of normal childhood light up his face again. Ethan's steady presence never went unnoticed. He never demanded anything, never pressured her, simply offered support when she needed it. One afternoon, he dropped by with a small potted plant for their apartment. "Housewarming gift," he said with a smile. "Supposedly impossible to kill. Important for new beginnings." Isabella laughed, accepting it. "It's perfect. Thank you." Diego immediately claimed the plant for his special shelf in the living room, his excitement contagious. Isabella watched Ethan interact with her son, the gentle patience in his tone, the warmth in his eyes. It struck her just how different he was from Luis, how safety and love could coexist in one person. Months passed, and trust between Isabella and Ethan deepened. He helped her prepare for job interviews, brought Diego little gifts for birthdays at school, and celebrated the small victories of everyday life with them. Slowly, the gratitude Isabella had felt toward him began to blossom into something warmer, something that made her heart flutter in ways she hadn't expected. One chilly evening, as Isabella and Ethan sat on the porch watching the desert sunset, she finally asked the question that had been lingering in her mind. "Why have you done all of this for us?" Ethan smiled, leaning back in his chair. "At first, it was because of my sister. I couldn't bear the thought of someone going through what she went through and no one helping. But then, I got to know you. And I saw how strong you are, how hard you fought for Diego. I wanted to help because you deserved it. You reminded me what real courage looks like." Isabella felt a lump in her throat. "I don't feel very courageous. I just survived." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about being scared and doing what's right anyway. You grabbed your son, ran through the desert, and refused to let fear control your life. That's courage." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not only of fear or sadness, they were tears of hope, of recognition, of trust earned and felt. As the months turned into a year, their friendship gradually became a safe space for something more. Ethan's visits were never intrusive: playground afternoons with Diego, quiet dinners after the boy was asleep, walks around town talking about everything and nothing. Slowly, Isabella realized that she was beginning to care for Ethan in ways she hadn't anticipated. One evening, he invited her and Diego to a local community picnic. Isabella was hesitant at first but decided to go. Watching Ethan interact with the people in his life, friends, neighbors, and even his sister, Julia, she saw the depth of his kindness, the respect he earned from everyone around him, and how genuine he was. Julia hugged Isabella tightly. "Thank you for letting him help you," she whispered. "It means more than you know." As Diego played with the other children, Ethan and Isabella sat together on a blanket. The desert sky blazed with sunset colors, the air warm and still. "I need to tell you something," Ethan said, nervous for the first time since she had known him. Isabella's heart skipped. "I know the circumstances of how we met weren't ideal. I know you might still see me as someone who helped you when you needed it. But over the past year, you've become one of the most important people in my life. You're strong, resilient, an incredible mother, and I've fallen in love with you. With both of you." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Ethan. I feel the same way, but I'm scared. The last time I loved someone, it nearly destroyed me." "I understand," he said gently. "I'm not asking you to rush. We can take this slowly. But I wanted you to know how I feel, that I see you, not as someone I rescued, but as an equal. A woman I admire, respect, and love." Isabella reached for his hand. "I'm not ready for anything serious yet. I'm still healing. But I care about you, and I want to see where this goes, if you're willing to be patient." "I'll wait as long as you need," he promised. The next year was a careful dance of trust, love, and healing. Dates were simple: playground afternoons with Diego, quiet dinners after bedtime, long walks where they talked about their hopes, fears, and dreams. Ethan never pushed, never demanded more than Isabella was ready to give. Slowly, her fear began to fade, replaced by a cautious but real joy. She learned that love could be gentle, that a man could be strong without being controlling, and that trust could be rebuilt with patience. Diego grew more confident, more joyful, and started calling Ethan by a nickname he had given him, Mr. E. 2 years after that day on the highway, Ethan proposed. Not with a grand gesture, but quietly, in their living room after Diego had gone to bed. "I want to spend my life with you," he said simply. "Both of you. I want to be Diego's father in every way that matters. I want to build a family with you, if you'll have me." Isabella looked at him, at the man who had stopped on a New Mexico highway for strangers, who had given her his jacket on that first cold night, and who had supported her without ever trying to control her. "Yes," she said, through tears of joy. "Yes, we'll have you." They married 6 months later in a small ceremony. Diego was the ring bearer, taking his role very seriously, and Julia stood as Isabella's maid of honor. In her vows, Isabella spoke of the day they met: "You saw me at my lowest point and didn't look away. You gave me your jacket when I had nothing. You've been giving me pieces of your heart ever since. You showed me that kindness isn't weakness, that strength can be gentle, that love doesn't have to hurt." Ethan's vows were simple but heartfelt: "I promise to always stop when someone needs help, to always offer my jacket to someone who's cold, and to always remember that the most important things in life are the people we choose to love and the moments we choose to show up." Years later, Diego would ask his mother about the day on the highway. "Were you scared when Mr. E stopped?" "Terrified," Isabella admitted. "But sometimes the scariest thing is also the right thing." "What did he say to make you trust him?" She smiled, remembering the jacket. "He said, everyone needs something warm when they're starting over." That's when I knew he understood. He wasn't just offering help. He was offering dignity, respect, and a new beginning. The jacket was carefully preserved in a special box, a symbol of the moment their lives turned toward hope. And every time she looked at it, Isabella remembered that sometimes salvation comes in the simplest gestures: a jacket offered, a hand extended, a stranger who sees your worth when you've forgotten it yourself. Ethan had stopped that day, and in doing so, he had not only given them a ride to safety, he had given them a road toward healing, trust, love, and a life filled with possibility.